Function notation, again, you should remember this from last year. First thing, if you look at the first equation, when we look at an equation that's in this form, x is the input, isn't it?
Yes.
And y is the output. So my question is, when you look at function notation, do you guys really understand what function notation is telling you? X is still the input value. So that's the input value, and the x that's inside of this is also the input value. So when you see a number inside of that parentheses, it's giving you the input value. When they ask for f of something, they're asking for the output. That's what f of x takes the place of. It takes the place of y. So they're asking for an output value. So literally when you look at the next part on the top row there where it says f of 2, they're asking you what is the output when the input is 2. Oh, that just f of 2 says that. It says what would the output value be if you were to input 2 into the equation. That's what function notation means. I think some of you have a hard time grasping when you look at that what that is asking you to do. It's asking you to plug in 2, input 2, and say what comes out. So if we did that in the function there, you're literally just plugging this in. You're going to take this and you're going to input it in there. It's going to be 3 times 2 plus 4. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 4. That is your answer, that you're just finding an output value. That's all that asks for. If you plug in what they're asking for, what are you going to get out of the equation? Does that make sense? So it's not, they're not solving for x, the x is getting replaced. You're replacing it with something. You're plugging it in. So let's look at the examples here, because as you can tell, Part B and Part C get a little bit more complicated. And this is very similar to what you're going to see in your homework. So this is the same thing you're going to have to do in your homework. So Part A is similar to what we just did. They gave me a number. I need to plug in -5. So I'm going to put -5 in for each of the x values here into the function. That's my input value. Taking that, I'm inputting it. And then just be careful with your math here. -5 squared is?
25.
Positive 25. -2 times -5. It's going to change that to plus 10, plus 7. So we get 35, 42. I like the number 42. Anybody? 42?
Yes.
42?
49.
Do you know what 42 is?
42?
Yeah.
42?
But do you know what 42 is?
No, I don't.
Nobody in here knows 42?
No.
You know?
What is it?
It's probably for hot.
No! Yes, Jackie Robinson. No, there's all something else. There's more nerdy than that. No?
Oh.
No? Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes, he's
yeah.
got it. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah. It's the answer to the question of life and something, 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 blah, blah, blah. It's 42. It's 42. They're looking for the answer to the question of life, and there's a whole sentence. Anyways, moving on.
All right.
I'm still confused.
That's confusing.
We'll look it up at the end.
Yeah.
Part B. Again, the thing in parentheses is what you have to plug in for x. So now this whole chunk is what I have to plug in for both of the x's over there. So I'm going to plug in to the first one, and it's going to turn into x plus 4 squared, minus 2, x plus 4 is going to go where the x was, plus 7. And then you do have to simplify this. When you square a binomial, you get a
I know.
trinomial. So either FOIL this, write it out twice, FOIL it together, or if you can do the shortcut here, the shortcut is x squared plus 8x plus 6. I got the 8x by doing x times 4 times that exponent of 2.
Plus 60.
Plus 16, I think I said 6. Then we distribute that -2, so it's going to be -2x minus 8 plus 7. And we're just going to simplify this, but then we're going to be done. We're not actually solving. There's no solving here. We're just giving a simplified answer. So it's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 15. Yeah? That's your answer. You're not solving anything. You're just plugging it in and simplifying it. Input, put in the input, say what the output is. That is our output. Because we're inputting something with x, you are going to get an output of something with x. Good?
Yes.
And then part C, what are we inputting?
Negative.
Negative x. So Be careful with inputting negative x. Please make sure you put it in parentheses when you input it. It's going to be negative x squared minus 2 times negative x plus 7. And this is going to, part of what we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to be plugging in negative x, so this is kind of giving you that step before. Can you plug it in properly so that we can do the next step tomorrow? So what happens with the first one? What's negative x squared?
X.
Just x squared, right? It comes out positive. Negative 2 times negative x. It's going to change that to plus 2x plus 7. So nothing really changes except for the signs. That's what we're actually looking for, is what happens with the signs when I plug in negative x. Do any of them change? And that's going to be part of the question that we ask tomorrow. So the first one changed, and the second one,
Bless you.
yeah, they both. The first one didn't change, actually. The second one did. So that's part of what we're going to look at tomorrow. But just plug it in. Good? Oh, and I have a mistake here. Please fix it. I meant to go in and fix it in your notes. It's supposed to say this.
Okay.
Make that an X.
I'll just.
You guys can white it out and fix it. But this is what's called the difference quotient. This is actually something that's super important. Almost all of you in here are going to be taking calculus. This is, when you get to calculus, this is a big chunk, big part of calculus, so you really need to understand this. It looks complicated. I agree with you. You look at it and you're like, what? We're going to do this in pieces, and then we're going to plug it into the formula, okay? So the first thing, the top part asks for two things. It asks for what is f of x plus h, and then we're going to subtract f of x, and lastly we're going to divide by h. So my first suggestion to you, step 1, don't try and look at it as a big problem right now, just find that first part. We're going to find f of x plus h. That's what we're going to find first. Okay? So looking at example number 1, that, with what we just talked about, what does that mean I have to do with x plus h? That's your input value, yes? You need to plug that in. So that's going to go where the x is here. So we're just going to write this out, and we're going to simplify this as a step 1. Find that first part. That's the hardest part of that formula. We're going to find it first. In terms of quizzes and tests, I would give you the difference quotient. I don't expect you to memorize it. I just want you to be able to use it. So don't feel like you have to memorize that. You just need to be able to apply it. So this is going to be 6x plus 6h plus 1. I can't combine any of that. It just stays like that. Yes?
What's just happening?
I just plugged in x plus h into the formula, into the function.
You didn't even get
What about the other part of it?
Step 2. We're going to use the formula, but when you plug into the formula, after the minus sign, you need to put the function in parentheses. You need to use parentheses here. That's the place where you're going to mess up. So the first step, if we look at the formula, it says f of x plus h. Didn't we just find that? That's going to go first. That whole thing we just wrote out, we're going to write that down first. 6x plus 6h plus 1. Then it says minus. The formula says minus. Here's where I'm saying if you don't do this, you're going to get it wrong. It says minus. I'm going to put it in parentheses. It says minus what?
6x plus 1.
It says minus f of x. What was f of x? 6x plus 1. So we're just going to plug that into the formula. I'm trying to color code up here a little bit so you see where everything's going. And then what does the bottom part of the formula say?
Over 8.
Divide by h. So the black parts are what was already there in the formula. The purple part I plugged in from what we found from our first step. Step 1 was find f of x plus h. I found it. That's what goes in the first spot. That goes in here. Minus was in the formula. Minus this function. The original f of x stands for the function that we already had as our original problem. I just took that and plugged that in. Using parentheses though. Make sure after that minus sign you use parentheses or you're going to mess it up. And then divide by h was already in the formula. So it's literally just taking what we found, plug it in. Minus what this is this, plug it in. Are we okay? Step 3 is going to be to simplify this. We're going to do another one in just a second. Step 3 is to simplify. So first thing I would do is that minus sign. I don't like that minus sign outside. I distribute it to everything. So those are, I'm going to change it to plus the opposite of both things that were in parentheses. Distribute that minus sign to the parentheses. That's why you need the parentheses there, so you remember to distribute it, because we're subtracting that whole group. So make sure you have parentheses there. So this is going to be 6x plus 6h plus 1. Actually, I don't need to write that all out, do I? Back it up. How about we just look at, do you see what cancels now that I distributed the minus sign?
6x.
The 6x cancels,
1.
and the 1's cancel, don't they?
Yes.
You're going to see that. You're going to see some stuff that cancels. That's what should happen. Because now all I have left is 6h over h. And what happens with the h's? They cancel out. So all I'm left with is 6. That's your answer. Alright, one more. So step 1. Just focus on that first part. We're going to do the hardest part first. F of x plus h. We got to do that first. So we're going to plug in x plus h. That means I'm inputting x plus h where the x was. And you have to simplify this. So I like to do all this work on the side first, then I go back to the formula. Again, I have that typo there. So let's fix that. That's an x. How am I going to simplify this? When I square a binomial, I get a trinomial. First term squared? X squared plus there's a middle term. We need a middle term. What's the middle term going to be? H times x times 2. Don't forget about that 2. There's going to be 2 of them. If you FOIL it together, you're going to get x times h and x times h for the outside and the inside. So it's going to be 2xh plus, or 2hx. I guess maybe it looks better that way. We'll put the x at the end. 2hx plus h squared. And then we have to multiply that by 3, don't we? So that's really 3x squared plus 6hx plus h squared.
Wait, 3h squared?
Oh, 3h squared. Sorry. Whoops. Whoops. Let me fix it. Let me go up there and you can FOIL it, you can write it twice and FOIL it together. If you're not good at the shortcut, I was just doing the shortcut up there. If you're not good at it, just write it twice, FOIL it together. It's this times the 2. That's how you get the middle term for all of these. If you take these two things, multiply them, and multiply them by that 2 that was there, that's always the middle term. So that's my shortcut for the middle term. That times that times the 2. You use all the numbers that are there. Multiply them together. Because it's a little bit more complicated.
It's not more.
It's not the most complicated one we'll see, but it's a little bit more complicated. Are we okay on that part? Okay? So now the next step is just plugging everything in where the formula tells you to put it. So that thing we just found, that's the thing we have to write first, right? The formula says I'm writing that first. So I'm going to write that out first. 3x squared plus 6hx plus 3h squared. Then the formula says minus. What am I going to put after the minus?
3x squared.
First thing you're going to put is parentheses. And then it's just what f of x was, right? Which is this part here. So it's actually just minus 3h x squared. Divided by formula says h. So now we're only subtracting one thing, so the parentheses aren't as important. But if you like to do the distributing of it, so you see you can put plus the negative there. What's going to cancel?
3x squared.
The 3x squareds go away. Then we write down what we have left here. I've got 6hx plus 3h squared all over h. Here's my suggestion for this one, because there's more than one part in your numerator. I would suggest that to simplify this, you actually factor out. Can you see that you can factor out an h? Can we do that? Factor out the h. We're going to be left with 6x plus 3h all over h. Now that that's factored out, now I can cancel out. I just want to make sure that you guys know you can't just cancel like the h out of the first thing only. Because we're dividing both of these parts, both of these by h, aren't we? So I can't just say that this h cancels with this one and that one stays, which is why I want you to factor it out first. Factor it out first. After you factored it out, now it's no longer joined to anything. Now you can cancel it out, can't you? I'd rather see you do it that way. So those cancel. So your answer is just 6x plus 3h. That is your difference quotient. No, because it was an h squared, so only one of them would cancel. What this gets into is it gets into things about, do you guys know what the graph of 3x squared looks like? No. You don't know what kind of shape does a graph that says 3x squared look like? It's a parabola. It's a U, right? What this gets into in calculus is being able to find the slope of that U at any point. So if we were to come and pick a point, we could actually technically plug in a value right now, and it's going to tell you what the slope of that graph is at that point. So just as a preview to why you would use this. But right now we're just using it. And calculus, you'll do a whole lot more with it.